everyone. It's Venetia here from P3 Studio, and I'm joined by one of the most famous people in the startup ecosystem, Dickie Currer.
Hello.
He's going to be my guest today, based on a book that will be released later this year on personal branding. As I do these one-on-one for people, what is quite obvious and a big part of our brand is our networking style. People buy people, and as much as AI is coming and entering into our world, the people buy people is not going to go away. And so there's a lot of power in proximity. It's definitely how I've built my brand. I know it's very much how the hype man has built his, but you need to know how to use it. And so many people do it awfully. And we are going to be in networking season very soon. So I thought, you know what? Why don't we talk to the man himself? So that's how we got here. Firstly, it was just going to be an interview between him and I for the book, but then actually I think this could be really good to share with the wider community. So let me ask you, firstly, what is the origin story of the hype man? You also have an English accent, so tell us more.
Yeah, so as you can tell, Vinny, obviously from England originally. So I moved to Australia 11 years ago from the UK, so from a little village called Hemmingbrooth in North Yorkshire. And look, I was a lawyer back in the UK. I was in the British Army for a period of time. And across that, I worked in various different sales and business development and marketing roles. And, you know, ultimately, I was someone that had a wanderlust for life and an adventure inside my soul, despite doing all those things like law. And from a very young age, I was given an atlas by my godmother, Sally, who my mum still blames for the reason why I moved to the other side of the world. And I was just obsessed with travel, right? And seeing the world and understanding the world and its people and its cultures, right? And so it brought me to Australia, where over the last 11 years, I've built a new life here. I've built a career. And most recently, in the last 3 years, how we got to know each other is obviously building a career in the startup and innovation space in Australia. And in the last 6 months, I launched my own business called Hype Man Media, which basically helps to tell stories and create content to support innovators in Australia and globally. Yeah. So basically sort of sharing about what's happening in innovation. We've got a newsletter podcast coming soon, a video series, and it's really just helping to educate, entertain, and inspire people, right, about innovation, entrepreneurship, and breaking down the barriers to entry. But I guess the core to what we're talking about today and the core to my personality across these various jobs, industries, places in the world has been people and communicating with people.
Yeah. So I think it's really good always to start with the definition of what networking is. So I'll just share what the definition I've got in the book and from research. So it's the activity of meeting people who might be useful to know, especially in your job, which actually is quite important. But I would love to know your definition of networking from your vast careers.
Yeah, look, I would say it's the process of building relationships with aligned human beings with the potential for a mutually beneficial collaboration. So breaking that down piece by piece, relationships, you know, networking for me isn't transactional. It's about really establishing a human connection and building a real relationship. Second piece of that is aligned human beings. So looking for your people, right? For your community. This for me is how you move from networking to building a network. And then the last part, that potential of mutually beneficial collaboration, I think the core to networking and community building and relationship building is not about outcomes, right? If you make it about outcomes, then you won't build a long-term, authentic network. It's about really investing in relationships, which more often than not will lead to outcomes, but it's not necessarily that the first thing that you're looking at trying to do. That to me is what networking is.
Yeah. And how has this philosophy benefited your career?
Enormously, right? Like I'm now a solopreneur. Like I say, I've got a couple of businesses, but one of them literally is, you know, really communication heavy. And I think the reason I've got to that stage in my career is because I've built those relationships. You know, like I turned what was, you know, changing from a very much a career and a job focused mentality to a relational mentality is mean that I've been able to build a community, and then from that community that became an audience, and now that's become a career.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, the origin story, but for people at home, I started to working in a few different startup and innovation inspired roles, or focused roles. And off the back of that, I started to really build a personal brand around, supporting entrepreneurs, and people started calling me the hype man for Australian tech and innovation, because I really championed, things that were happening in Australia. And that wouldn't have happened if I was just working, in my own kind of silo, right? It was about really getting to know people, giving back to a community, and then networking and finding my group of aligned human beings, right, which I can rely on for support, inspiration, and ultimately build an audience of people that want to hear what I want to say, and again, offering incredible support, right? So I'm at the point now where I get my business opportunities all come through people that I've invested time in, and I didn't ever see it like that. It was just I was just getting to know awesome people around me, and case in point where we are today, right? We became friends first, and now we collaborate and do awesome things like this together.
Yeah, absolutely. And where else have you seen networking done really well? Whether it's people or events, or like, where have you seen networking done well versus awfully? And you can compare to your previous careers that you've been in compared to now. And would love to get your thoughts.
Look, as a traveler at heart, I think, reflecting on this, I think, I'd like to kind of think about where geographically it's done well. I do a lot of work overseas, and especially in like the Asian countries like, India, Vietnam, Philippines, South Korea, most recently. I love the way people there network, right? Like they take the time to get to know you. It's often over a meal. There's an extreme level of hospitality involved in a lot of those cultures, as you know. There's always a lot of there's often a little amount of talk about business, right? So when you first get to know someone, it's not necessarily like I said at the start, you're not sitting there thinking, how can I work with you? What's the transaction? It's really focused on understanding the human being first. Then when there's a deep level of trust, then there's a bringing out of the professional side, right? Which is, again, like is really thought through, and it's followed through really well. And I don't think that's just something that happens in Asian countries, right? Like I had an Italian boss when I worked in a role at RMIT about 5 years ago. He was the same, right? He'd walk down his high street and he knew everyone, and everyone knew him, and he built communities like everywhere he went, right? Like he used to take me out for lunch once a week, and it would just be one of those really deep questions of like, how are you? And it felt like he actually cared, right? His name was James. Shout out to James. When he asked me a question, it was like, I generally felt like he cared about me as an employee and as a person. And again, I think that's a little bit of a cultural thing.
Yeah. Leadership quality too, when you think about it.
Look, and he's an incredible CEO right now, and does some amazing things as a business consultant as well in his own business. And he asks for favors from, CEOs in his network, and it's friends again, right? It's not like you're going cold to someone in your network. He's literally just hitting up someone that he goes cycling with on a weekend, right? Like there is enormous power in people who can do that, right? And you can actually
and trust, right? Because it's mutual, like they support each other.
Exactly that, and build trust, right? So, and in terms of the flip side to that, look, I never want to pick out someone. One scenario, that though I do regularly encounter people, I guess, who the way they network goes against my principles of what I think networking should be. One of those examples are people at events who approach me and look to get an outcome straight away. Like happens quite a lot, and I understand like people's time is precious, especially if you're a founder of a business. Like, you go to an event and you want to get an outcome, right? You want to walk away with something. But I would say to people, invest the time in getting to know people. That for me should be the outcome when you're networking. I can immediately sense from people, I think now, I've done this for so long, that there's no win-win, or there's no attempt to trying to build a relationship, it's an instant red flag for me, right? Like for me, it's about building partnerships, and I'm interested in the people who want to get to know me. So I've had it before where people come up to me and, you know, they're straight in like, "Hi, Dickie, I've got X, Y, Z, and I'd love to get X, Y, Z from you." You know, at a party at 10 p.m. And I'm like, dude, like, get to know me first. Ask me how I am, how my day's been. You know, have a bit of chit chat. It's like if we went for a coffee together, you wouldn't sit down and straight away be like, right, here's what I want from you, because
In some cultures it is. In some cultures it is, but I think Australians don't really like I think we're at the middle between of the US and of Asia and even the East when I was in Saudi. But I don't think humans like to feel like they're being used. Like I was like, yeah, it is this really, and I think you and I are very people. So I have to gauge, what is your moral compass like? Can I trust you? And I can't do that from one interaction if you just see me as a piece of meat. Like I don't like that either.
100%, right? And that's why, yes. I mean, that's the difference between sales and partnerships, right? As someone that's worked deeply in both, there are times to have sales conversations where like you're outcome driven from the start, and there's times to understand that it's about building partnerships. For me, you know, if you want long-term success in one industry, that's what you should be focusing on. At networking events, right? Like that's but that's for me kind of, they're the red flag people, generally speaking. And usually, you know, most of the time I understand it. I can see where it's coming from, but I do think that that's the time when I say to people, just, you know, invest in people a little bit more, and you'll get so much more back.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest misconception of networking is?
That it's boring. Like, I mean, I love talking to people, right? I love I'm the kind of weirdo that goes to like a wedding as like a +1 and doesn't know anyone, even like the bride or groom. And I'm like sat before I'm going, like, I cannot wait for this. I'm going to meet strangers. Who knows who I'll meet there? You know, I'm that sort of weirdo. But I think there's this, you know, I think people have been missold this. They hear the word networking and straight away they think of this really boring, stuffy conference center where, you know, you've got to go and pretend to be someone that you're not. And you can't, you know, have an honest conversation or be authentic, or, you know, you kind of stand there and talk shop the whole time and talk business. Like, I know we work in a pretty, you know, in the entrepreneur industry, it's a little bit different to the rest. But I don't think you have to, you know, I think that the style of networking that I want to put out into the world is transferable across nearly every industry, right? I think for me, it's the exact opposite, right? It's like I approach a meeting someone new with joy. I think it's like anything in life. Like if you approach it with a negative reaction, you're going to have a negative outcome and experience. So just to enjoy it, right? Like, you know, when you were a kid, making friends wasn't painful. So why should it be when you're networking and building business relationships in your adult life? Like it's a joy to meet new people. So I think for me, that's the biggest misconception, like that. It's this big, scary, boring, horrible thing that you have to do to have a successful career. It's like, I mean, you do need to do it, but you should kind of want to do it, and you take the enjoyment from the experience. And really, it's making friends, it's collaborating.
I would say it's like come with a servant thing. Like, how can I help you? I think that's the people I like. What can I learn? What can I learn? And where can I help? Like, where can my skill set help? Or to that. And networking is like, people think it's just shallow conversations, and you have to mask and be something you completely don't want to be. And actually, if you just know yourself pretty well and know how you like to show up, then it's actually not a daunting experience. It actually you could meet someone that you never know that could get you to where you may need to be. But I think there's always that balance between, if you go to a conference, they want outcomes.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you, or is it that, okay, we have sales focused activities that will go on our prospects, versus we see this as a relationship building exercise and kind of gauge where the market is and use it as more market research versus.
Exactly. And I think the other one, Vinny, is that networking is only for extroverts. All right. Only extroverts can be good at networking. Like, I agree. Extroverts and introverts, you know, it's about energy, right? And what gives and takes energy. It's not necessarily about how good you are at communicating.
Yeah.
So like extroverts get energy from being in those scenarios. That's me. But I still have moments where I, you know, retreat. I'm an only child, so I retreat to like my own company for to reserve energy. Introverts normally get taken away from them from those scenarios.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that anyone's any better at it. Like, I think it's just like about managing what the networking is going to give and take away from you, right?
Yeah, and how you approach it, right? Like I am an extrovert, but I network like an introvert. In terms of like when I go into a room, how I do it is I will talk to one or two people in my own parties. I'm not out working the room because it's not the way I like to show up. I like to have in-depth conversations. I want to meet you again, even if it's not about work. I just want to get to know you as a person, and I've done that consistently. And so I network like an introvert, and it's more aligned to me. So because I know myself well.
It's aligned to you, and it's also about the purpose you want to achieve, right? So for you, success is coming away with 2 or 3 really strong connections. People you really got, and I've seen you at networking events do this, right? You're still with the same person for an hour. Like I'm the opposite, right? So I generally, like I guess with my business and the way I kind of like my online presence, I think about it like a one-to-many approach, right? So like I network through posting on LinkedIn, if that makes sense, right? So like I got engaged in December. I put a LinkedIn post up about that. It got 80,000 impressions, right? Which blew my mind. I don't know that many people, but now for the next year, every single person I'm seeing right now for the last 3 weeks and probably for the next year is like, oh, you got engaged, didn't you recently? Congratulations. That's networking, right? Like giving me a point of difference to talk to someone about. It's opened up like a conversation. Exactly. There's like a brand familiarity around that. So when I'm at an event, a lot of times for me, it's about kind of getting around the room and just saying hello to as many people I can in, for 2 or 3 minutes. So that I'm still keeping that like touch point with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I want to back that up with the online content so they get to know, they know and follow my journey and grow with me. Both online and exactly right. So it's really about just kind of like bringing like that brand that they're seeing every day to in real life for a brief moment in time, and it just adds to the brand that already exists. If it's in a room full of new people, I'll act differently because they don't know who I am, right? So I'm going to walk around then and really try to engage with everyone individually, like you. But so it's about purpose, right? And also kind of like you say, your own style that you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. And I think people like to really get to know people, and you do that really, really well. So is there anything else that you wish everyone kind of knew? So I think this is really good that what you build in person, your offline and online personality have to match. I think you're really good at that. There's a lot of people who do it awfully, where they have this incredible persona online, and then you meet them in person and you're like, what the fuck? So you meet them in there, and then you look at their online like, what?
It's not like the James Corden effect, allegedly. Like I don't want him to sue me, but like there was this whole thing around him being like so nice on his chat show, and then everyone was like, he's actually toxic in real life. But
it happens a lot, which is so sad. Makes you genuine, right? Like you can have genuine presence and do well if it's aligned.
In terms of what I think I'd love everyone knew, would probably be their personality superpower. Like, I did. I've got a business coach. She's called Simi. She's an amazing woman. We did a bit of a personality deep dive about sort of 18 months ago now, where we sort of went deep into the things that motivate me and give me energy and things I like to do. And there's like a 4-hour immersion therapy basically. And I came away with these 2 words, right, which were basically defined everything I do and what my personality is, and that was fun and impact. I love to enjoy myself, love to have a laugh, I love to be life and soul of the party, but I like to make sure there's actually something happening that's helping me, helping other people, making the world a better place, etc., etc. And knowing this about myself really gave me like another level of confidence going into events, to meeting people, because I'm like, cool, if ever I think like I'm lost with my outcomes, what I'm trying to achieve, my purpose, like it just come back to those 2 words every time, right? Like it gives me so much confidence to be like, that's and I always struggle with the fun concept. It's like I love going to events and like having a good time, and now I know it's a core part of my personality. it's the opposite. I embrace it, you know. And then if you become a more authentic, genuine, confident version of yourself, and ultimately once you have that really strong kind of you know, value proposition about who you are as a person, that stands out when you meet other people.
Yeah, that's why I'm
Like,
writing a book, because this is what I see, the light in people's eyes when they have got that clarity of how they like to show up. Then there's less masking involved. It's just easier for everyone.
exactly. And you shine.
Peaceful. Yeah. Like I got a lot of criticism because I didn't work the room. And then I was like, but then I leaned in and then I was like, oh, actually, this is how I like to show up. And because I did that so consistently, then I would know, people would know me really intimate in the room. And I love that. But then you just got to work with what works for you. I attract a lot of craziness because of the briefcase and my hair and nails and earrings and all that fun stuff. But, you know, so when you go to a large conference or gathering, how important is it for you to know people prior? I mean, you already mentioned the wedding thing, but like if it's a professional conference, do you like to know who's in the room?
No, not really. Like,
wow. Okay, cool.
I've never been the sort of person that like tries to approach someone. Like, you know, like it's very rarely like, you know, would I like, and sometimes I think is just a failing of my character. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I should be that kind of person that's like, you know, I want X from someone. I'm going to find them in the room, track them down, get to know them, etc. But I like to leave it to serendipity.
Yeah.
And like, I think it goes back to what for me it means to be networking, right? It's about building authentic relationships. I sort of probably 18 months ago decided that as I was building out kind of my brand, I wanted to make sure that I was looking across the room and not up at someone or not down at someone, right? So whatever I was doing, because I think that builds in a power imbalance into any relationship, right? And I think maybe this is sometimes is a human reaction to what I talked about earlier. Someone coming up to me and asking me initially straight away for something.
Yeah,
you know?
because they're seeking you as an outcome and you're a piece of meat, literally. Like,
yeah, or there's naturally like an element of like, you know, this person is looking up to get something. Like, and I think it's, you know, I wanted to make sure that I was going into every room thinking like that I was comfortable with my peers around me and that we were all, you know, incredible people. Like, and so I don't really do that. Like I like to, it's like seeing celebrities in the street, right? Like I feel like when I was like in my 20s, I'd be like, oh my God, that's so-and-so, I'm going to go ask for their autograph. And the older I get, the more I'm like, no, if I bump into them and have a conversation at the bar, amazing. But I don't want to be that person that's constantly looking up at people. And I think sometimes like, you know, doing that piece of research prior is kind of, I think it's good to know what kind of people are attending events. But I want to leave a lot of relationship building to serendipity because then it feels natural, it feels authentic, you know. And you can do that in a fairly subtle way, right? If there's someone that you want to meet somewhere and you've noticed that, you can do that by just, you know, bumping into them at the bar, across the, you know, the food table, or just going up to them casually and being like, oh, I'm a really big fan of what you do, you know, rather than approaching with that ask. Like, look, if it's someone that I'll never get to see again, I'll make an exception. Like we were at South by Southwest together recently, Vinny, in Sydney, and I saw Hamish Blake, comedian, walk past, and I was like, I want to get an interview with him. I have to grab you. Like, so there's definitely moments where I'll still fangirl over people.
Yeah, like, of course. He's very fangirl worthy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I literally would love to be him. Like, but for me, it's like, again, it brings back to that whole thing of like authenticity being key and that leading to real networks. You know, if you meet someone at an event who's researched who you are and comes up to you and, you know, straight away is coming in for like an outcome, you know, you're probably not going to have a long-term relationship with them. It might just be a very like, yeah, you'll do them one favor and that's that. So that's really why I don't do a lot of research, to be honest. What about you?
I like to know which friends are going, and that's about it. I mean, you've seen at networking conferences. I don't even know who's speaking. My God, so twisty. I'm outside chatting to whoever, and there's usually someone I know that will introduce them to someone I don't know, and I'm just outside having conversations. So it's only if my friends checking they're going, and then anyone else, I come with complete curiosity and openness. I was like, well, what's going to happen today? I don't know. Who the briefcase going to attract? Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's the reason both of us. We're like, right, come on, world. Like, give me serendipity and manifestation any day, and I'll just see what happens, you know?
Exactly. And coming from corporate, like I've been in corporate for 8 years, and before that in the UK, and before that in trades. And so like networking and being in these conferences like can be my complete self, and it's so refreshing. And I haven't had that. And I've only had that for like 3 years, will be in May, but I haven't had that opportunity. So it's just really nice. So that I'm really enjoying. But even when I was like that in corporate, I'd had to hold back a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas my ability to have to just mask or do that is completely gone, which is so nice because people resonate with it. It's now not. I like you saying your 20s, like it's very much. Do you like me? It's more like, do I like you?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, it is so nice. So, you're a big fashionista yourself, not just I. Do you think what you or how you look makes a difference? What have you noticed?
Firstly, I'm not a fashionista for sure. Like I'm an op shop shopper at Deeply, which is cool nowadays. I was there before it got cool. I think that people instinctively try to connect with people who look the same way as them. I think that's human nature. I think the quicker you can train yourself out of that, the better, right? Because, like, you know, you're a huge advocate for this, but you know, building a real strong network is about diversity of looks, thought, experience. You know, all those different things. But I think the confidence we give off makes more difference than how we actually look.
Interesting.
Do you know what I mean? So I think people are drawn to confident people. People who are enjoying themselves, showing great body language. You know, I think that's more important. Like, to some people, that can be how they dress, right? Putting a certain outfit on gives them confidence.
Yeah.
Some people, it can just be kind of, you know, being in a very natural environment. Like, I think it's less about appearance and more about confidence.
Yeah, and how you exude. Yeah, that's a really, really good point.
So.
Yeah, 'cause I'm trying to think about like, the people that I kind of find approachable versus not approachable, and it would be very much like I do look at what they wear, but I just go, I'm very open. I think like, do you kind of have people that you find approachable versus not approachable?
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's not about how they look, right? It's probably more about like the instant feel I get when I interact with them.
It's the gut feeling.
Gut feel. I think you can work it out in like, and I think the more you do this as a job, like, and you know, across, like, I think to mention my brief career background earlier, the reason I think I'm semi-qualified to talk about this is, you know, working across, I was an immigration lawyer, I was a criminal defense lawyer, I was in the British Army, trained to be an officer, you know, working in sales. I feel like I've had to work with, you know, immigrants,
all kinds,
criminals, soldiers, like, you know, and obviously influence people through sales, like an incredible spectrum of people, right?
Yeah.
The more you do that, the more you start to build this like real pool of communication skills and techniques. And it's something that I started to realize sort of 7-8 years ago, and then became like hyper reflective on these things. And so, yeah, I think like, you know, I think like the kind of people that, and having this muscle now, the kind of people that I like to speak to, within a few seconds, I can kind of get a bit of a read for what kind of person they are. And it's the ones that open with curiosity, with humor, are open to getting to know you. It's like an actual kind of, it's an authentic interaction. There's a bit of give and forth on both sides, like, you know, and I think that's literally the most important thing for me.
And how about the ones that you find unapproachable?
Yeah, it's like bad body language, or, you know, it's little things like you're talking to someone and they're looking away and who else is in the room, you know, or this stuff is so rude. Like, and I can sometimes be guilty of that, but I'll pick myself up on it afterwards and be like, that was rude. Like, or I'll catch myself in the moment being like, Dickie, like, be present. Like, or people looking at the phone, or one word answers, or, you know, like they're
like dragging conversation.
Yeah, talking about themselves, or, you know, like, like it's all those things, right? I think are a bit of a giveaway generally.
How about, okay, how do you feel, because I have an opinion on this, those people that say, I hope you don't mind me walking into a conversation, I hope you don't mind me stepping in?
Yeah, I think it's fine because like, I mean, I I can understand how hard it can be if you're in a room and you walk into a room and you don't know anyone. Everyone's already talking in circles. Like in those scenarios, I think that's fine. Um, that's just the nature of a networking event, right? Like I remember, do you remember we were both together at Sunrise this year, right? And there was a period for about the first hour and a half where I didn't talk to anyone for more than 30 seconds because every single time someone walked in, they bumped into the conversation I was in, and it just became this like crescendo of noise. It just happened, and it was actually insane. But I think in those scenarios, it's okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's about manners, right? Like I think
Yeah.
if you go walk into that and someone doesn't change what they're talking about for a couple of minutes, then you kind of have to understand that might happen.
Yeah, okay. So it's like read the room. My strong opinion is I hate it personally.
Yeah.
Get it. But I'm usually, because of my style, usually in something quite engaging. So I think it's like I share with people who might be listening to this, read the room. Like
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the amount of self-awareness. It is my absolute one of my pet hates. I hope you don't mind me interrupting. Yes, actually I do, because I'm having a really intense freaking conversation and you've just disrupted the whole thing. Like and I ask you this question because I everyone is so different, right? Like because I have intense conversations, my conversations are not boring. So someone is actually interrupting something, which is so funny. After this, everyone's like, "I'm not going to go near."
Whereas my style, like I'm kind of used to it because I'm generally bouncing around a room with having like sort of 3-minute conversations with people. So like there is really a natural kind of energy, and then but again, like that's probably where I'm in my sweet spot. But it does depend on the room, who I know, the type of event. Like there's so many different factors.
Yeah, exactly. So it is that reading the room. Like that. I mean, there is. I mean, I do want to ask you this. If you were to enter into a room with people you don't know, so this is for all the people that are listening to this that will probably encounter this as they grow their business or their function or whatever.
Yeah.
What is the first thing that you do if you're going to a room of people you don't know?
I would do a lap of the room first to get my bearings. So just kind of like understand the dynamics of the room. Like, are people talking in large groups? Is there anyone that recognizes me? What's the general vibe?
Yeah.
An idea of kind of what is happening. And just start to feel comfortable in that space, right? Because like I said, it's about confidence, right? And that can be a pretty quickly knock on your confidence if you walk into a room and you go, I don't know anyone, right? You can start to kind of shrink and feel a bit, even for the most extroverted, outgoing people, can start to feel a little bit like
confident people too, right? Like they can.
Oh, 100%, right? And you start to feel a bit like this is going to be hard work. So I'd say like first thing I do is trying to get myself comfortable in the scenario. Grab myself like a drink or something to eat or something, so I've got like a physical activity. So I'm not just stood there in the middle of the room. And then if I haven't stumbled upon someone serendipitously, I'll try to find a space where I can do it, bump into someone in a natural way, right?
Yeah.
Then jumping into a conversation going like, hey guys, can I join this conversation? Which I think in most scenarios is pretty fine if it's a group conversation.
Absolutely.
We're at a networking event, so people should be expecting them, right? You can't like hog spaces. So like somewhere like where the drinks are being served or where the buffet is, and just try to like insert myself. Like, because if you try to insert yourself into a large group, it can be, like you say, it can be troublesome, right? It can be hard, or you can sort of end up. I've been there before so many times where I've like gone into a group and I'm like, oh hey guys, and like I'll just stand on the edge, and then I've there 10 minutes later I've not said a word, and people are still talking. I'm like, oh, this is awkward. Like, I feel like a real outsider. But if you can sort of just bump into someone organically, that's amazing, right? That's your first conversation, and then you've got that person to go back to later if you feel like it doesn't go natural, right? Like, so the amount of times I've met someone like I say, while I'm waiting for a drink, waiting for the bartender, or I go to grab like a bit of food, and the person next to me like turns to them in the line. I'm like, oh hey, are you here by yourself? Or oh, what brings you here? Or oh, look at this fish and chips, looks nice, doesn't it? Like, the most kind of like random conversation starters, but it happens in a kind of authentic way, and then hopefully that will just build and become normal. But potentially that person's always also looking for the same thing, right?
I was going to say, yeah, my biggest tip is food. I go straight. If I don't know anyone, I'm straight at the food, because food makes me happy. So at the food, also wanting the food. And I'm like, is that vegetarian? And I'm like, and then what I say to people is your body language is relaxed because you're around something you like and you feel comfortable with. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm near cheese. Like I love cheese. Or, you know, like your body is, it's that body language is already more relaxed because you're around something. And there's probably, like you say, someone else who probably wants to be near food as well.
Or you find that person who's like clearly stood on their own, right? Like that's an amazing way to make a good friend straight away, because that person's probably doing exactly the same thing in their head as you. Like, oh my God, I don't know anyone. So you're like, the amount of times I've walked over to that person in the room being like, hey, you by yourself? Like, what are you doing here today? Like, and they're like, oh, amazing. Like, and instantly
connecting. And so it's okay. Like, we're going to say this thing. It's like, it's okay if you don't have anyone to talk to. You can find other people if you engage in a way of curiosity rather than what can I get out of you? And that will make it less daunting. Like, who are my new friends I might meet today? Or who can I help today? And I think that mentality is so much more powerful than what can I get out of you? Because people don't like that. Now, you say you've gone to a room, you've gone to a networking place, you've met incredible people. What is your next follow-up action? What do you normally do?
It's LinkedIn for me, right? Like, I think like that's like it's where I do most of my work. It's on my biggest sales channels. These days everyone has it. Like, if you meet someone and you're like, oh, do you want to connect on LinkedIn, and they say no, like it does happen, but it's extremely rare, right? It's really light touch, right? You're not asking for someone's phone number or to get a coffee straight away. Like, you're adding them to your larger network for the long term.
Yeah, if they want to reach out, they can message.
And it's same, right? Like, if you want to have a coffee with someone like straight away, I would still start with like, let's connect on LinkedIn. And then that next morning I'll wake up and send them a message being like, hey, last night was great. I enjoyed chatting. Can we go for a coffee sometime?
Yeah, so it's a lot more gentle.
That sounds like a date. Doesn't it? Like, oh, last night was great. Let's catch up again. But I mean, really, not getting lewd, but it's the same mentality, right? It's the same psychology that we apply in relationship building across professional and personal, right? So for me, that's generally like the most obvious kind of follow-up, right? So, and then if you add them to your network, like they're also going to see what you're doing, what you're working on, like become part of it.
Well, like, who do I know that they know? Because that's the first thing I do. A tip that I give for people for networking, what I do that's worked really well for me, I know obviously it's not for everyone, is if someone adds me that I don't know from LinkedIn, I will send them a message that I at least have to have a conversation or meet. So everyone I have on my LinkedIn, majority, I would say about 95% I've either met or had a conversation with on the phone. Wow. So I can validate, like, follow me, that's fine. But if you're a connect with me, I genuinely will know you in some way. And that when I'm connected with someone, I was like, oh, how do you know blah? How do you know blah? How do you know blah? They're like, oh, you actually really know all the people on your thing. I'm like, yeah, it's a deliberate way that I network because of the way I am, which is as much covering as much space. But it's very deep. And I've met phenomenal people through that way, because I meet people and I'm like, well, you reached out to me, I'm interested in you. And that people ignore me, like, that's fine. I mean, they're lost, to be honest, because I know what I bring to the table. That's also, I think, something that's really important is being really confident in yourself. I think as you're going to these networking events, I think that plays, like you say, such an important role, but not arrogance, confidence. I think there's always I love your thing about seeing around, like seeing in this equal way, then looking up or looking down.
Yeah. I think there's a massive distinction between arrogance and confidence, and it's taken me most of my 20s and 30s to work that out, But 100%. And like to answer your question again, in terms of the follow-up action, like a really great hack I'd love to share with people is if you have any sort of defining part of a conversation to follow up with people, like it is like, so this example would be like you took a picture of something with someone, or you, like, a great one will be that I do is if I'm watching someone on stage talk, I'll take loads of photos of them and then send them to them straight away, right? And that is people, generally I'll know them a little bit, but I won't know them super well. Sometimes it's friends that I know, right? But like it's really like it's a really helpful thing, like you're helping someone straight away, right? So if you've talked about like a podcast, or if you've talks about like a movie recommendation, or you talked about someone that you have mutual connections with, or like even if you've said to someone, I'm not going to do XYZ, if the next morning you like flick someone a message, like there's an instant like sense of gratification from them, and like almost like,
well, it's like personal building. It's like relationship building, isn't it? Connection.
It's a deeper connection, right? Or it's like, oh, great. Like, if I took a selfie with someone, I'll send to them the next morning and be like, oh, how good was last night? And people straight away are like, oh, yeah, like, like Dickie's gone that little bit extra mile to like engage with me. And, so like, I think that sort of thing is like a really great little hack to build something that goes beyond just a casual fleeting engagement at an event, right?
Oh, I love that. Oh my God, it's so good. Is there any other tips or anything else you want to share before we kind of wrap up our networking bit?
I think with networking, like I guess like I mentioned, my career transformation and history is like, I think it's a learn by doing thing, right? You can't go and like, I mean, most things in life are, but you can't go and sit down and read a book about networking and then walk into a room and just be incredible at it, Like you just can't do that, right? It's just, it's not possible. Yeah. So I think, it's about, if you want to get better at networking, it's a numbers game, right? Like literally it's practice makes perfect, right? So if you're the kind of person who's sitting at home listening to this thinking, I am terrified at the prospect of networking, I don't want to do it, like set yourself a goal to do one networking event a week, make it across, make it varied, people you do know, people you don't know, experiment ways of engaging, and just kind of
like, what I say to people, like, when I first started in the tech industry, I didn't know anyone. I would go to networking events to learn. And if I met someone, that's a bonus. But I want to learn about neuroplasticity. I want to learn about brain surgery. I want to learn about EV cars. Like, I don't know, like whatever the topic was, like I want to learn. So I came in with complete curiosity. And then if I met someone next to me, that is a bonus. But it all goes down to your business, your culture, your understanding about how human relationships are, and that they're not transactional. Even no matter what AI comes in, they're just not transactional. You can't. Otherwise, you'll be around other transactional people. Sometimes it's a cultural thing. So it's good to let people know in Australia, they have to get to know you. It's a look before you touch country. Yeah. So you have to have strong online presence or some online presence before people will engage with you. So the LinkedIn is a very good way to showcase a bit of who you are as people engage you. But in other countries, it's very different. They're very like direct and is it a yes, no, okay. But in Australia, it's not like that.
No, and I think, if you're sort of starting to be like, right, okay, I want to get good at networking and move beyond just kind of like doing it, right? Like I say, experiment, measure the results, etc. But like, start to think about every conversation and every relationship you have as networking, right? Like, it can sometimes consume you a little bit, so like, be careful of how you manage this. But like, I sometimes think about how I'm coming across when I'm at family events, friends events. How I'm explaining concepts, how I'm building relationships. Like it's the same thing, right? If you go to a family event with all your cousins and plus ones and partners, like if you do this for a living, you start to think about kind of like how you are building relationships. And generally speaking, it's about having the numbers and doing it over and over again, but with different people from different things, right? Like being good at networking is not being able to talk to one exact kind of person. It's about being able to have like a really broad set of conversations with people and like be able to tailor your personality a little bit as per the conversation, right? That's how you really build a super powerful network and a community that's going to serve you, and going with that giving mentality. So like, I think just be reflective about like, how you engage with the human beings around you on a day-to-day basis is literally the perfect way to start getting good about networking.
Yeah, and it's like a friend you haven't met yet. Like, is this a potential friend instead of a potential opportunity? Exactly. And it'd be a lot more freeing. It's less pressure on it to have an outcome if you're coming in with curiosity.
Exactly, 100%. Like I'd say, number one piece of advice is just enjoy yourself when you meet new people, right? And they also
come with human stories. Like when I was doing the session networking, the personal branding session with someone yesterday, I said, he's like, I love real life stories. I said, amazing. where's your real life stories? Had amazing ones. I said, share these. He's like, I don't think they'd want that in Australia. I was like, yes, they do. This is human struggle. Everyone wants to hear these stories.
And look, it's fine. Not everyone is comfortable at doing that, right? But like, I lead with vulnerability in every conversation, right? Like, that's something that it took me years to feel comfortable to do, but like, it is so core now to the way I network and the way I build relationships, is by like, if I'll, it sounds facetious a little bit, but like, if I'm in a room full of strangers and I'm hungover, like that morning, I'll generally start every conversation with that, right? Because like, it's a relatable thing that people know about. It starts a conversation about something. It's funny for most people because they're like, oh my God, look at you, look terrible. And you're owning like the thing that might make you worse at what you're normally doing. Like you're kind of owning the scenario, right? And being like, right, I'm gonna make the most of this. I'm in this position now anyway. I'm gonna take advantage of it and smash it, like and that bleeds into another concept of like being unordinary in your initial engagements with people, right? Like, walking up to someone being like, how was your day? Those look at the weather today. It's like the whole cliche, like, don't talk about the weather, right? It's like, how are you feeling? Like, go and tell someone how you're feeling at the start of a conversation. You're like, oh, if you said, like, before we got on this call, you jumped on the call with me and like, how's your day been? And I'm like, I had like 6 calls this morning with like 6 founders. It's been amazing. It's been hectic. Like, how easy could I have just gone? Yeah, it's all right. How's yours? Like, that's not engaging people, is it? Like, I feel like being ordinary at the start of a conversation, because you've probably got that first 30 seconds to grab someone's attention. And so like, use those little things that are happening, like those feelings in your life to build engagement. And that's,
you don't have to be a crazy extrovert with phenomenal social skills to do it. Like, it's human storytelling and we all have stories.
Exactly.
We all do. Well, Dickie, you're amazing. You are definitely the hype man of Australia for a reason. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you all enjoyed this. And the book's coming out this year. Lots of other goodies. Thank you. Stop recording.
I will.